is where we can get success to support the teenagers nowadays. We look for a multi-agency approach for schools, for clubs, for friendship groups, and crucially for parents. But I think the message must be to all of us here as parents, we should not look to be the solution. We should look to be part of the solution. Obviously, with my school's hat on, I want parents to work together with schools. I think it puts the student in the centre, and it means we can get the best for the student, for your children. But we must recognise also that teenagers are influenced by other things. We'd love it if they just listen to their teachers and they listen to parents. But obviously they have peers, and you saw in the video which started the influence that peers can have on your children, and not even by speaking to them, just them thinking they're being watched by them, their decision-making processes change. We need to be aware about actually how their brain is working. But we need to engage with our children. We need to engage with their friends, and we need to engage with them to understand what they're being influenced and through. And we recognise that social media obviously is a massive thing at the moment. So Alice, it's wonderful to be involved with this. Thank you for the invitation. And I'll let you sort of carry on with the presentation.
All right. Thank you so much. So dear parents, maybe before I carry on, I'd like you guys to let us know in the chat box, if you were to name a single challenge, you should say, I feel like if I had the power to change, I would change this. Or this is one thing that really, really gives me a challenge. Or, as far as my relationship with my child is concerned, this area is one that I feel is the most challenging. What would that area be? Please let us know in the chat box. What would you say is the biggest challenge, facing teenagers, or just generally in your journey of parenting? What is that? What challenge is it? Just one. Quickly let us know in the chat box. So as we carry on engaging, we'd like to know what are the struggles. So, we'll know to speak to them. I'm waiting to see that in the chat box. Okay, all right. And so, team, I'm really hoping that you guys will help me out here so I don't miss a lot of this. Oh, wow, and you're raising some pretty good points. So, sorry, I thought I froze there for a minute. I would want my child to share more about their lives, okay? And I'm sure you don't just speak for yourself, Ashaba, you speak for many parents when you say that, yes, we do feel like our teenagers really do not share much about their lives with us. And they're going to be talking about why that happens. Jacqueline is like phone, nothing else, just a phone. Again, I can assure you, you're not alone. Instant gratification, Foina is saying mood swings, welcome aboard. It's a hormonal period, things are happening. Beatrice is concerned about passing on, her values. Someone is talking about rebellion. Nketo is talking about rebellion. Again, something that's very common in that age bracket. Communication, I think we've had that from another parent. Irene is talking about peer pressure. Thank you so much for letting us know. Dorcas is saying getting them to discuss what is going on in their minds and lives. I think we can agree that, getting teenagers to open up and freely talk to people, especially their parents, about what's happening in their lives is an area that we find challenging. Building their resilience, being free with me. Wow, this is impressive to watch. Pressure to fit in. I think, I don't know, maybe Mr. Pennington, would you like to speak to a few factors here that are really recurrent, if I would say, an issue of communication or, just expressing themselves to their parents and wanting to fit in, the pressure to fit in. And somebody else is also talking about drugs. Just as an overview, would you like to talk about it before we go into how the brain of a teenager revolves or grows?
Yeah, I think it's everything that's being raised now. I'm sort of smirking with a view of that there are challenges which we all recognise. I think we recognise the social media side of things, and I think crucially we emotionally respond to our children. We want them to fit in with their peers. We want them to have the latest gadgets. We want them to be in communication, of course. And then that's that paradox between wanting them to have a device so we can contact them and be reassured where they are, but equally the dangers that opens up to them, especially in an age-appropriate way. I think we have to at times understand that we have to make hard decisions, and they can influence our relationships with our children in a negative way. And we can often want to be the nice person, or we want to be the strong person, but then if we're the strong person, we don't get the communication. If we're the nice person, we don't get the boundaries we want. And I think actually that probably hits to the heart of what parenting a teenager is like. That actually you can't be everything to that. You can't be everything to your child. You have to actually put in place other people around them and realize that it might not be you they talk to. It might be somebody else, and you've got to be able. That's the correct thing to do. I think on a very practical note, there are things you can do on social media. You can install apps on your children's phones which allow them to limit what they can get on. You can even get on and be able to see where they've been, what they've been looking at. Because whether we like it or not, if we give them uncontrolled access to the internet, they have everything. I mean, they can access pornography in moments. They can be exposed to things which I know there was a message in the comments about values. If we give them access to the internet, they have everything. And if we think they won't be accessing it, we're naive. I say I've got a 15-year-old son. I'm very careful in what he can get on, but I'm sure in a moment he can bypass things unless I'm careful. The communication one I think is really important. We have to model it. And it goes back to this idea of us as adults. Do we model communication? Do we show vulnerability around our children? Do we discuss things that are maybe uncomfortable for us? Within schools, we are required to teach things about sexuality, about drugs, about alcohol, about law, about legal side of things. And they are difficult sometimes to talk about and to talk to teenagers about, because you might feel unsure about it. And I think there's nothing wrong with sharing good practice among parents groups, among peers, among professionals like Alice's company, to actually get support and how to have those conversations. But I think the communication one is crucial, and I think to model that and to be prepared to have difficult conversations with your child, but then also allow them to have conversations with other people that you trust, that you built around them, without necessarily needing to know everything they've spoken to each other about.
Thank you so much for for raising those points, and just to stress on, or to just talk about what you've said, that Mr. Pennington is encouraging us as parents and saying that if you have a child, it's okay for you to encourage them to talk to somebody else who's not you, okay, without the need to want to know everything that they talked about. So I think that the key thing here is for you to sort of have a community where you have shared values and people you trust, so that if my daughter cannot talk to me about anything that's going on. Are you raising your hand, Mr. Pennington?
Sorry, I was cutting you off, and I apologise for that. There was just a comment that was placed in the chat about resilience, and I think that's a real concern at the moment. Looking at this generation, about all resilience in them while supporting. And if you'll forgive me a fairly terrible metaphor I tend to use about this, is actually teenagers are confronted time and time again by what appears to be a tightrope walk between two cliff edges. And I think as parents, we are desperate to make sure that they succeed and they are safe the whole time. And the danger in that is we mollycoddle them, we hold them too tightly, and we don't to have that fear of failure, the fear of the fall. And I think if you take that analogy a little bit further, if a child or a teenager is confronted by a challenge, and take that from one side of the cabin to the other, and they start walking across the tightrope, if we bring the safety net right up to next to them, and we have people who hold their hands either side, and we support them all the way across, and they reach the other side, when they're confronted by that again, they look for that support immediately. And I think as parents and as educators, we've got to be prepared to set the safety net quite low, appropriately low for that child or for that teenager. But as a parent, I think that's really hard. I think in the school situation, it's easier. We can look at a child and say, actually, the safety net is a bit lower than maybe the child or the parent might want, because we want the child to feel the fear of the fall as they come off that, as they maybe don't succeed in getting from A to B immediately. They fall and they have that heartbeat. The heart goes bang. What happened? It's the picking up again, and the people around them, pick them back up and put them on that tightrope, and get the child, the teenager, to reflect on maybe why they came off that road, that actually allows real growth. Because ultimately, if we don't allow our children to take responsibility when they fall short, they're never actually going to get the credit when they succeed. And if we allow them to feel that, to learn from their failures when they don't quite reach their goals, when they're confronted by the next challenge, they draw on that. They don't immediately look for somebody to immediately help them. They draw on their experiences. There was a very famous psychologist called Lev Vygotsky who talked about the zone of proximal development, and I think he talked about that as a learning process educationally in academics in classrooms. But I think it's incredibly relevant for children nowadays, is about how we scaffold and how we support children to push themselves out of their comfort zone, but don't do it for them. You know, emotionally, we may want to do it for them. We may want to take on their challenges. We may want to take on their troubles, but actually we're doing them a disservice in the long run. And I think that's probably the hardest thing for a parent to do, is emotionally remove themselves from that. There are teachers and schools are more capable of doing that, because though we become emotionally engaged with the students, we do tend to see things from a logical perspective. And I think that partnership between the emotional and the logical is crucial in developing that resilience within teenagers.
All right, thank you so much. I think I can see there's more comments that are still trickling in. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you that, we'll collect them and we'll make sure to get back to you. And feel free to send us an email. We'll share our details towards the end of this. But if I'm getting this right, Mr. Turi, Mr. Pennington, you've tackled a common issue, which is what parents are talking about: phones and gadgets and devices. And you say that there are methods that parents can be able to sort of manage or limit how much time their children spend on these devices. Okay. And truth be told, it's we, the parents, are the ones who make these gadgets and devices available to our children. So, with clear boundaries, there are ways you can go around it. And not to worry, we'll share some of this with you, including apps and other areas that you can work on to improve the amount of time that your child spends on the screen. Then you've talked about trust and community, and to ensure that your child has somebody else who's not necessarily you, the parent, that they can talk to. And I would say this, anytime you get to work with children or teenagers, parents come and say, this is a 3-day program, it's a 4-day program. How do you manage to get them to open up about all these things, about their lives? And they never did it with us. And, there's something about children being free or opening up to people who are not necessarily their parents. So it's okay for you to, cultivate a community around you that, if I'm not there, there's a cousin, there's an uncle, there's a friend, there's a neighbor whom they can talk to and confide in. Then something very important, I think you've mentioned on communication, and you've asked a question, I think you posed a question to the parents, is do we model good communication, parents? And maybe on a scale of 0 to 10, dear parents, 0 being very badly or doing very poorly, and 10 being fantastic, how would you rate yourself in communication? How would you say, on a scale of 0 to 10, dear parents, honest to God truth? We will not share these results with your children, we promise. How would you rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 10? And this means, how you express yourself when things are working, when things are not working, when you're feeling frustrated, when there are difficult topics. Nowadays there's a lot happening, and Mr. Pennington has mentioned something around the topic of pornography, sexual orientation, just sex education, general things. Okay, I'm seeing an average of very quickly we've moved from 7 to to 4s, and yeah, we've got some high performance here, 7s and 9s and 4s. But yeah, so it's really important that we model what it is that we hope our children can turn out to be. And I like, a saying that says that our children don't do what we tell them to do, they do what they see us doing. So, you can tell them to do something, but as long as you're doing something differently, that's not going to work. And then finally, you've tackled the issue on resilience, and this has been a big topic, discussion everywhere we go, where we meet parents and teachers. Everybody's saying, in fact, the words I think that I've heard being used is like, children nowadays are soft, oh, they're so soft that they can't, they would not survive what we went through. Oh, they're so cushioned. There's a generation of, young boys and even girls who are overly protected, they're spoiled. And we've had all these terms, and I'm sure they do exist in different countries, whichever way you address them. But I think what I picked mostly is what he said, that it's good for us as parents to emotionally remove ourselves in order to allow our children to explore. Okay, and we teach kids how to to fall back, or to what happens when you fail. You try again, and you cheer them up, but you really need to ask yourself, how do you teach your children to motivate themselves? Do they always sort of depend on an external sort of motivation, or do you actually teach them to sort of reach deeply within themselves to be able to do that? And we'll be sharing some of these insights. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Mr. Pennington. So having seen
Yeah,
this.
thanks. Yeah, thanks. I've been having a look at the scores, and I would suspect that those parents who are in the sort of top end, the eights and nines, started somewhere near the threes. And I think that, especially with the teenage daughter that I have, trying to get her to open up and discuss things with me is tough. And it's difficult when you first start raising things, and it's, oh, Dad, don't talk about that. That's cringe, or I don't want to hear what you're talking about. But actually, over time, that relationship and those conversations become easier. And I think the danger is for teenagers, they're almost testing us at times. They kind of hear us say, ask us about something that they know we find awkward, and they maybe test us quickly coming back in a kind of stonewall way, or not wanting to engage. And actually, it's a way of seeing, will we come back? And so what I would encourage those who are maybe on the kind of the 3-4 level is, don't be disheartened if you feel it's not right the first time. Go back and see whether you can crack that nut a bit harder, and sort of, give your child a second chance to maybe open up. I think just another thing, just to back up the idea of surrounding teenagers with different people, is there's a lot of research done that when a teenager really opens up to somebody, that actually that can be the end of a relationship, because they're so vulnerable in if they have that position, they're so vulnerable that actually they then withdraw from that person. And if you go out to the idea of that emotional side of things, as a parent, we maybe don't want that to be us. We always want to be the person our child comes to and speaks to, but actually allowing them to speak to somebody else, allowing them to be vulnerable with somebody else, allows that your relationship to continue with them. I think just the last bit on this, Alice, if I may, is we want our children to come to us if they have a problem. And there's lots of adverts and Instagram reels where parents talk about this, saying, if there's a problem, I want my child to call me. And I think we need to be explicit sometimes in talking to our children about that, actually saying, listen, whatever you come and tell me, I will always love you. And I think it's a deep message to keep telling your children as teenagers, that actually you won't stop loving them if they expose themselves to you about issues they're having. But it isn't just a one-time thing. Please keep doing that, because that builds trust between you and your teenager, and actually will then reassure them that they can come to you and speak to you about things they're worried about. I'm sorry, I know it's a final thing. The other thing I would say, just on the connection of phones, if you have a teenager who is now going out, so they're maybe 18, 19, moving on, I would put something that there's a message where if they send it to you, they're in trouble, and they want to come and see you. Yeah, they want you to come and help them. Because if they've got friends around them who are often looking at messages and things, just a code that you may have with your teenager to know, actually, this is a problem, I need to get out of it, is something quite useful. That's obviously only for the 18, 19, etc. from there. But it is helpful to have something they feel they can just tell you without telling you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I'm seeing a lot of comments and messages that are coming in. I can see our team is doing a good job in responding to them. Parents, just to let you know that this is the first of many sessions that we're going to have. And now that you have your contacts, we'll keep inviting you for more and more sessions. So please hang in there. I can see a lot of topics that parents would like to discuss, and they've brought them up. We see all of them, and we're going to react to them in due time. But so I don't know at this point, Mr. Pennington, would you like us to talk about how the brain of a child develops, for parents to sort of get an understanding of what it is that happens, when you hear them saying, oh, my child has changed. They used to be very bubbly, they're very expressive. Now they just keep it to themselves. They can stay in the room for many hours. Would you like us to explore that a little bit?
Yeah, it'd be helpful, very helpful.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Let me know that you can see my screen.
Yeah, good to see that.
Okay, fantastic. And so, parents, this is it. The brain, it's the organ that, that's doing a lot. It's doing a lot of work in influencing what it is that we see, what we hear, or what we feel, and not just for the children, for ourselves as well. And I think that if we invested a little bit more time in understanding how the brain of a teenager or even of a child works, we'd have, I think, a little bit more patience. And even when you feel like you've really, been pushed to the wall and you've had it and you don't understand why. And sometimes you ask a child, why did you do that? And they tell you, I don't know. But it's really because they really don't know. Sometimes they're not in charge. It's their brains that are in control. So we're going to look at something that's called a window of opportunity in a child's development. And what this means is that as every child is developing, from when they're born and their brains are developing rapidly and they're growing and they're learning, that there are periods in time where, as a parent, as an educator, you can take advantage of certain factors in the development of the child. Maybe it's learning a skill or getting to do something. So they are called windows of opportunity, and they are open at certain levels. And sometimes you have only a limited amount of time for you to take advantage of it. And when you don't, the brain does something called pruning. I know we've had this expression before, where you're told use it or lose it. The brain is like a muscle and you have to work it, you have to exercise, and you have to do this. And it's either you use it or lose it, whether you're learning, say, different languages, or you're learning how to play a musical instrument, or you're learning a different skill. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Then we're also going to talk about what you can do as parents, as educators, as teachers, as a community to support the emotional intelligence and the resilience in children. Then we're going to talk about a relationship which we think here at Potential Bridge that is really, really important, and that's the teacher-parent support. If you take your child to school and then that's where it ends, there's a lot more that you can do in order for you to support the teacher, to support your child more. And then finally, we're going to talk about effective communication, or how you can build a strong parent and child bond. So because of how much time we have, we're generally going to look at 3 areas, and maybe we'll look at them one by one. So if you have a child who's between 0 and 11 years, we like, when you're working with children in this age bracket, we have different programs that help them to be able to bridge how they use their brain. And when I say that, I don't mean to say that they're not using their brain, but I mean there are times between 0 and 11, which is, they're perfect times for parents to take advantage of the windows of opportunity. Now, between 0 and 11 years, actually, they say that by the time a child is 5 years, 95% of the brain develops. The rate at which children take in information through their senses, they see things, they hear things, they feel things, they smell things, it is so quick. And the speed at which the nerves, are being formed in the brain is so fast that by the time they're 5, 95%, I want you to really take this in, 95% of brain development happens by the time we're 5 years old, okay? Now, in this particular age bracket, what you want to do as a parent is to be able to lay the foundation for growth, lifelong growth. You want to teach your children to be curious, okay? Because they're forming neural pathways in their brain for their emotions, And I tell parents, we do this, even back in the day, when our parents and our grandparents, and if you talk to them, you hear them saying, they would sing to children, they would tell stories, because children at this age take in information through the senses. So, whether you're singing to them or you're reading to them, if you want them to develop a culture of reading, I tell parents, sometimes go home and sit in front of not in front of a TV, of course, if you're reading, but take a newspaper, take a book, and just sit there quietly. Even if you're not reading, just flip through the pages. And that young person is watching you and they're thinking, maybe this is something that I should do. And that's just one example, okay? Then, and I'm going to give Mr. Pennington a chance to talk about this as well. But I would also like to stress that between 12 and 17 years, this is where we have the preteens, we have the teenagers, and the parents are like, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. We've tried talking to them. We've tried grounding them. I've taken their gadgets and I'm still not getting through to them. Now, at this particular age, parents, when a child is between 0 and 11, even when you're interacting with them, and this I'm saying from my own experience, there's sort of a God, they see their parent as a God. Like, they really trust, they look up to you. No one is better than my daddy. My mommy is the best. When I grow up, I want to be like my mommy. they love you, they worship you, they look up to you. And then they turn 12. And nowadays, even at 11, they start to develop a sense of who they are, their own identity, they're forming their own ideas, they're questioning and, learning about other things. But most importantly is that in this particular age bracket, they really care a lot, and I mean a lot, about what their peers have to say, what they think, how they feel. And sometimes when you talk to them, it doesn't make sense. If you ask them, why did you do that? Someone was being bullied in class, and, I went in and I joined people who are bullying the boy or girl, and I'm like, why? Then they're like, you want me to be the one who's not bullying the person being bullied? I'm going to be in trouble, So there's a lot of sort of a group mentality sort of thing. They want to fit in. And I've seen a lot of parents have raised that. So remember, this particular age, you said, is when pruning is happening in the brain. Okay, so if there are muscles or there are neurons that are not being used by the brain, they're being pruned. So the brain is saying, what are we using? What do we need? And how can we keep on doing that? And so you find issues like identity, moral compass is developed here. The other thing is that the limbic system, or what we call the emotional, part of the brain, is highly sensitive. So you'll find a 14, 15, 16-year-old who is highly, highly emotional, Whenever you're trying to have a conversation with them, it blows over. And you're like, I don't understand why. They're really sensitive, they're emotional. And then remember, all these hormones are, they're going through all these hormonal changes. They care about their appearance. If someone has a pimple, oh my goodness, it's such a big deal, because I can't even go outside. I can't hang out with people because, and initially we used to say it was a thing about, girls who care a lot about their physical appearance. Ladies and gentlemen, nowadays, even boys care more about how they look than sometimes girls do, These gadgets, social media, taking selfies, posting, you'll see the amount of filters on apps, whether they're using TikTok or they're on Instagram. They take a photo and then they'll apply filters for them to feel like they fit in. And so it's a really crucial stage in you helping them to develop sort of like a confidence, internally. And as much as you don't have a lot of control over what they do or who's around them or who they're interacting with at school, you could say that you've done your part in providing sort of a firm foundation for them to develop or grow on. And of course, you do other things to complement their development. Then finally, we have the 18 to 24-year-olds, At this point, they're building independence, visions, and, their future success. And we'll talk about this more when we're talking about the different programs that we have. But a very interesting fact of the brain, parents, I'd like you to remember, we said that by the time a child is 5 years, 95% of brain development has already occurred. But the thinking part of the brain, we like to call it the CEO, the chief of the brain, the person who makes the part of the brain that makes the executive decisions. It's called the prefrontal cortex. It does not fully mature until, and listen to this, someone turns 25. Okay, so if you've got a 12-year-old, if you've got a 17-year-old, hang in there. You've got that 11-year-old, there's a lot of work to be done until this CEO or the chief part of the brain has fully matured. Mr. Pennington, you have something you'd like to add?
It's fascinating listening to it. I'm just sort of reflecting my kind of engagement with this is mostly between the sort of 12 and 17 years. And I'm just reflecting on the idea when you speak to a child, a teenager who's maybe done something that you disagree with and say, why did you do it? And the often the response is, I don't know. And I think it's a genuine response from a teenager. They don't know why they did it. And I think if we understand that, how their brain functions, that allows us then to have conversations with them. Because if we keep pushing that, well, why did you do it? Why did you do it? That's when their emotional side comes in a way which is an emotional response, which could appear to be either angry or dismissive as a parent. And so actually understanding that their response of I don't know why I did it is a real response. I think the other thing is to think about is to get them to unpick why they did something eventually. What caused you to do it? Was it because actually your peers were around, or because there was a girl around or a boy around? Actually, for them to really understand how their brain works allows them to be in a better position to make a decision in the future. I often get students who have maybe been sanctioned for something. Of course, no students do anything wrong at St Andrew's Turi, but occasionally they do. And they often say, I won't do it again. And the question is, well, why wouldn't you? Faced with the same situations, faced with the same pressures, why wouldn't you do that? And I think that allowing them to understand how their brain works, the limitations their brain has in actually processing information in a quick way, allows them, if they are confronted with a situation again similar that maybe has peer pressure involved, is actually to be able to take a moment to allow their brain to catch up with their logical thought and allow them to make a decision which isn't based on their immediate response based on peer or social media.
Okay, and thank you so much for sharing that. I thought, Mr. Pennington, it may be from where you see it or where you stand as a head of a school, and you've had time to work with teenagers, over a long period of time. What would you say you feel are the top 3 challenges or issues that are affecting teenagers in your own experience? What are the top 3 issues that you've had to consistently over and over deal with, over and over again?
I think you touched on that body image. I think that it isn't just a female thing now. I think boys are particularly concerned about how they appear. I think they are. I think they're worried. I think they worry about where they go in life. I think they're acutely aware that our generation thinks they're soft, that thinks that they have it easy, and therefore I think they worry about how they're perceived. And then I think finally is about challenges in life. I think making decisions around relationships, around drugs, around sex, around alcohol. I think they're nervous because of the social media side of things. They're nervous if they do something, it will appear on social media. Their reputation will be ruined, and therefore they are. And I wasn't going to mention this now, but there's a great book called The Anxious Generation, which actually is a great book if anyone wants to read, by Jonathan Hadd, which talks about the impact of social media on the current generation, but it also touches on overprotective parenting. So I think if you haven't heard of it or you haven't read it, please go and have a look at it. I'm sure Alice will share the title. They are anxious.
That is true. We're living in an anxious world, as if you look at the social media and the impact and effects, and we'll have a session where we actually really talk about that. I think for me, other than what you've mentioned, issues to do with body image, parents, it's a thing that is affecting. It's no longer a girl problem, as you said. You need to help your children to be confident in who they are and the sort of lifestyles they live. There are things that you can do as a parent to support them to be comfortable in who they are. Okay, relationships, drugs, alcohol, sex. I've seen all that in the chat box, and there are things that we cannot avoid. Then you've also talked about social media. I think for me, the one thing that I've seen over the 11 years now, I've worked with teenagers, and it used to be sort of like a story, so it started like, oh, we are reading about this, it's happening, in the Western world, and it's happening in other countries, and we're reading about it in the media. But now, every time we have a group, like a training program during school holidays, and we get to meet students from different schools, different age brackets, different genders, is that children are hurting themselves. Children are harming themselves as a way to cope. And sometimes parents have no clue. We've had children in class who've attempted to take their own lives. They've taken pills, sometimes even in the presence of the parents, and the parents have absolutely no idea. They have, when you interact with them, you realize, we've got scars and we've got marks, what's happening here. And when they tell you what has happened, you're actually shocked that when you get to talk to the parent, they have absolutely no idea of what's going on. And sometimes it happens for different reasons, but it's actually become trendy. The thing about wanting to fit in with your friends, and they're like, this is it, it's the in thing, it's what you're doing. I'm saying this from students I've worked with, and they're like, I did it just because my friends are doing it. But of course, there are kids who harm themselves because there's something that they're going through. So parents, I would really encourage us to be deeply involved in what is happening in the lives of our children. And if you feel that you can't get through, build a relationship with the teachers, talk to the school, find out what can be done. And if that cannot work, look for other ways, look for other people who can be able to get through to your children. So at this point in time, if you have any questions, we're going to take the questions towards the end of the session, okay? But I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Pennington for him to walk us through the social, emotional, and physical development. And the question is what to do. We've had all these things, but what is it that we can really do as parents, as educators, as teachers? And I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay with you, Mr. Pennington.
Fine. I mean, this is wouldn't it be wonderful if I could just tell you how to do this and it all works? I think going back to that starting point I made, that actually we're all trying to work through this. But as Alice pointed out, the teenage years are crucial in developing the social, emotional, and physical development. And I saw a comment in the chat about wanting one's child to grow up with emotional intelligence. And for those of us who don't know, emotional intelligence can be developed. Rather than the normal IQ, emotional intelligence is something we can develop, and we need to look at how we can work that. How we do this, I think, goes back to reflection and responsibility of the teenager, providing opportunities for you as parents and for us as educators to be able to discuss with them decisions they're making and the impact they have on themselves, but also others. Often teenagers don't realize the impact they're having on another child, on a group of children, and actually getting them to position themselves in that other person's footsteps and look at how they might react to the impact they themselves are having on an individual or a group allows them to grow. Because actually, there are very few children who wish to be nasty to other people or wish to get in trouble, but they don't realize the impact they're having. And so create spaces and time for you as parents, but also for teachers to have those discussions with individuals, but also groups of children, where they can share in a very safe place how they've been made to feel by others, also what their intention was with their behavior to others, and realize it maybe didn't have the impact they wanted to have, allows them to grow in that emotional and social way. If they just behave in a way and they expect others to respond to them in a certain way, they don't get any development. And it's not about challenging them to that they did it wrong and you did this wrong and you had that effect. Actually getting them to think about what effect they wanted to have and what effect they did have on their peers. And it isn't an easy thing. It isn't an immediate thing. They'll get it wrong again, and gradually they will learn. But by giving them chance to reflect, you give them chance to grow. The physical development is tied in enormously with the social and emotional development. And the brain, as Alice has pointed out, is developing at this point. And I just would want to make a kind of an aside to these conversations we're having around about social media and about someone else put in the chat about routines. Sleep is so important for the teenage brain. They need a minimum of 8 hours sleep, and it needs to be proper sleep. And you will find that probably your children at times as they're growing up, you'll get annoyed with them. They're sleeping, they sleep so long. But probably during school time, they're working late, they're working early, and the time their brain has to switch off when they're asleep reduces. And I think if there's one thing we can do to empower our children to be in better places to make better decisions, in better places to cope with setbacks, in better places to build resilience, is to allow them to sleep properly. And if you look at the research around the impact of screens before they go to bed, actually, how many of us are strict with our teenagers of getting away from screens for an hour beforehand? About the impact of having books around, modeling reading for the first sort of stage, the pre-teens. But actually, there's a lot of research done with the children who grow up in homes that have books in them that are on display perform better at school. Not necessarily they read more, but they are open to reading. And I think that, but going back to the idea of sleep, if there's one thing I would suggest that we can all do better is ensuring our teenagers get the right amount of sleep so their brain is able to develop correctly, they're able to function better during the day, and they're able to cope with setbacks better and learn from them. The sleep bit for purely education, for learning, is absolutely essential for pre-learning, but also then for allowing the brain to process the information that's been given in order to hold on to that information, not only in the short term, but in the long term. So practically take that away from this session is the fact that if you can get your teenager to sleep properly, you will find a big change in their relationship with you, with others, and their ability and willingness to listen to you, to engage with you, and to grow socially, emotionally, and physically.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pennington. And I think if you look at research right now, we're being told that generally, and this is not just the teenagers or the kids, we're being told that we're becoming more and more distracted, society. Like our concentration span is getting worse than a goldfish. If you observe a goldfish and then you imagine that you're being told that, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, your concentration span is actually getting worse than that of this goldfish. It means that, we're living in a world with so many distractions, all this overstimulation, a child will come and tell us, I have a TV in my room, I have an iPad, I have PS, we have a TV in the living room, I have a laptop. And then you wonder, like all these gadgets, all these devices, and they could be for different reasons, but they're really, it's if you look at the internet, and the way they're marketing, they're saying it's a battle for eyeballs. It's about how many eyeballs can you have on your screen at a given time, and that they're willing to do anything. They hire psychologists who study, patterns of human behavior and what people do and how they behave, that they become so good at predicting, our own behavior and how we respond to content. And though you find, short videos on YouTube, they have YouTube Shorts now, there's Instagram, they have TikTok, all these, they have a very short, they need you to just, watch and keep swiping. So if you imagine that we live in a world with a lot of distractions, right? We're not sleeping enough. If you look at the diet and, the food that we're eating and that which you're feeding our children is not necessarily the best. And then there's no movement because, it is so easy for you to just sit back, and especially for a teenager, on your gadget and post photos and get people to comment and like, and you feel, you get the instant gratification. So we are moving less. We're moving less and less. And you could say that about, children, but also adults, where you depending on where you work, you spend a lot of the day or your time just sitting like this, like we are right now in front of a computer, and you're looking at light and la la la. All these things will eventually affect even your sleep cycle. And it's not just for the children, it's for us as well. And I feel like if we model this, at home, then it becomes easier for the children. Like if you say, we don't bring gadgets to our bedrooms. We leave them in the living room, and they're leaving them charging or whatever. We don't bring them to the bedroom. And so it's something that they can see you do, and so it's easy for them to model. That being said, it doesn't mean that there's no hope. I'm seeing Sarah is disputing in the comment section. She's saying, no. These children of nowadays, they don't even do what we do. It's not about what they see. Okay, so Sarah, we feel you, all right? And that's a discussion we'd like to continue with you, moving forward. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Again, I can see a lot of comments that are coming in. Parents, feel free to engage us. Maybe I'll ask our team to put up our email addresses and our website so that people can engage us even more, even on our social media, as we carry on swiftly because of the amount of time we have. Yes, Mr. Pennington?
Just quickly, there's a comment from Paul. There's a comment from Paul about schools not allowing enough sleep. Totally agree. I would really encourage you to hold the schools to account about challenging them that, given the amount of work they're setting outside the school day, how your child can get sleep. Because we've made a lot of changes here at this school. We're a boarding school, therefore we're able to do things like that. But please engage schools and challenge them to enable your child to get enough sleep.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, I can see parents asking, if I didn't do this when my child was at this age, does it mean it's too late, or what can I do? Can you help? And the answer is yes. Parents, we've developed products. We have programs for parents. Okay. So if you'd like to go through one of these programs, maybe you're wondering, how can I better my communication for me to be able to communicate better with my child? We have the programs for you at Potential Bridge. We have programs for teachers. We have programs for school. And most importantly, we have programs for students. So, and we've done this for a while, and we realized Even if we work with a child and a child really, really wants to change and they're doing what they've learned, they go back home to the same environment or back to school. And so we figured, why not be able to empower the teachers and the parents as well? So that together we can sort of form that triangle around the child. So if a child learns and they're willing to change and improve, the parents get the support they need. The teachers, are supported as they should, sometimes even by the parents. And then we, as the partners who come in this particular sector, we've seen tremendous feedback and results. And I think even in our midst, we have parents who've gone through some of these programs and their children as well. I don't know if Mr. Gakinya, can you hear me? If you're here, please let me know in the chat box. So we'd hopefully be able to hear from you. Mr. Charles, Tim, you can try and find out where Mr. Peter Gakinya is. But yes, so as we carry on, we're smoothly transitioning. Would you like to talk about this, Mr. Pennington?
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, so I'll try and keep it quite short.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier about the fact that as a parent, understandably, you are often emotionally involved in your child's education. From a school perspective, it's often a logical response, and I think that's where occasionally both schools and parents understand where each other's coming from. Schools need to be better at understanding that an emotional response is a parent's immediate response to an issue at school. I think we as parents need to have a look at ourselves and maybe check ourselves when our emotional response comes in, because it's often talking about when our child has maybe got in trouble, and we never want to have our child being the one who's in trouble. Maybe our child being pulled up for being unpleasant to another child. Something, it really hurts us emotionally that our child is that child who has caused somebody else to be upset. I think that's where that partnership that's been developed between the school and the parent comes into play. If there's no partnership or relationship at that point, that's where the child suffers, because they become a fight between the school saying something and the parent trying to say something else. And so by preparing that groundwork before something happens, whether it's good or bad, but there will be something that needs input from both the parent and the school. By building that relationship between the two, when it happens, you can have honest conversations between each other, not in front of the child. And I think that when issues arise, it's when it becomes a battle between the parent, often coming from an emotional perspective, the school coming from a logical perspective, and the child being caught in the middle. And actually, the closer we can get as parents and as staff, as schools, to support the child, the better the outcomes will be for the child. There'll be times when, as a parent, you will look at it and say, listen, you just suck it up. It's you maybe want to blame someone else, or maybe there's some other person involved, maybe someone else got away with it, but actually you did it wrong. Take on what's happened and learn from it. And what the school should do, if it's a good school, is understand that the sanction means the end of it. Actually, it's a growth purpose to give that sanction. It isn't a case that child is always going to be the naughty child there. It's about developing the correct decision making, and that needs to be a partnership between the parents and the school. And so I would encourage you, if there was a comment saying in the chat about the school not giving enough time, sleep, etc., don't be afraid to engage the school and say, listen, how can I support you? And this is what I'd love if you could support us as a family and support your child. Because ultimately it is a partnership between the school and you to develop your child.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think what we've gathered, through working with teachers from different schools, even when we're doing the teachers programs, is we've come to realize that times are changing, right? Relationships are changing between teachers and parents, teachers and children. It's not what it used to be, back in the day when a child would do something and the teacher would reprimand you, and then you'd go home and report it, and then your parent would even sort of, back the teacher. Now, things are changing nowadays. We've had instances in school where kids tell the teachers, I'm going to press charges, I'm going to sue you. And these are things that we were not used to seeing before. I think for me, it's really to stress, even if there's an issue at school, and as a parent you feel the need to address it, as Mr. Pennington is saying, please do it away from the children, because I can assure you, they are watching, they're learning. They talk about these things when you're not around, when you're interacting with them. They talk about your character, Yes, Pennington.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. I'm conscious that I don't want parents here to feel that life is just fluffy and lovely for children the whole time. And that's what we're trying to say to happen. That isn't what I'm trying to say. Is we should always be lovely to the teenagers the whole time and do what they want us to do. I give a quick example. I had a of maybe sort of 15 students from a 17-year-old doing their A-level examinations, and they came to see me at the start of this year, and they said, "Sir, we've got no work-life balance. It's really tough. We're working the whole time." And I sat there and listened to them, and I just responded saying, "What did you expect your final year at school to be like?" And they kind of went, "Well, we want it to be this, we want it to be that." I said, "Actually, you're at the moment, you're probably in the hardest time of your life academically, of balancing your subjects, balancing your social life, and balancing your brain development. But actually, you've got two choices. You either kind of curl up in a ball and say, life is too hard, and you sit there and don't do anything, or you move one step at a time towards your goal. And you may not see that movement at the start, but actually, if you don't do anything, you're getting no closer to the end point." And I think sometimes a reality check of our teenagers is a good thing as well. Not to sort of say, it's tough, get on with it, but actually be able to frame it in a way that makes sense to them in a practical way. And my metaphor for that is, you're in the middle of a dark tunnel, you can't see where the outcome is, but if you sit still, you're getting no closer to the end point. You know you have to walk that direction, and therefore keep moving one step at a time, do one thing at a time, manage what you can manage, but keep moving. And I think that sometimes is important for us as parents, as much as educators, is to turn around to our teenagers and say, listen, being a teenager is tough, but actually the wrong thing to do is to do nothing. And you are in control of doing little things. And I'm here to support you. Other people are here to support you, but actually the first step has to be taken by you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I don't know if there's any questions, parents. At this point, if you have any questions as you wind up, we promise to finish exactly at 9:15. Please send your questions in, and we promise to do everything we can in our power to answer your questions. Send us an email, visit our website, check out our social media pages, and please engage us. We also have a community of parents if you'd like to join and be one of us. And I think that communication has been sent out to your emails, but you can also just post the link. So, sorry about that. There we go. So yes, as I was saying, that it's really important, and in the spirit of supporting parents and supporting children and supporting students, is where at Potential Bridge we come in, because we've developed programs, we've invested time, in research, and we have quite a broad team, a diverse team. We've worked with doctors, psychologists, teachers, just to be able to know how can we position these products or programs that work well for parents, teachers, and students. And we have classes running throughout the holiday. So if your child, depending on how old your child is, we have programs that are segmented for children who are between 6 and 10. And this is our Brain Bridge program. It's a brain development program that helps children be able to maximize how they use their brains. Because remember, we said at this point is when their brains are developing really fast, okay? Then we have a program called Born to Shine. And this is for children between 12 and 14, a very critical age that we have there. Building their confidence, their focus, their discipline, and so on. Then we have a program called Responsible Teen, and this targets 15 to 18-year-olds. Okay, so here teens are helped to find direction, their identity, their confidence, and whatnot. And then finally, we have a program called the Future Ready Campus, and this targets children who are between 18 to 24 years. It's about leadership when they're planning their futures, getting ready for the job market. They learn about, the finances and money. Again, I feel like it's a topic that we don't quite address as much. So parents, if you feel like you'd like your child to attend any of our programs, We have offices in Nairobi, okay? We understand what's happening in Uganda. You know, in December, there's elections and whatnot. And so we're looking at having this program sometime in January, dates which we'll communicate to you. We have your emails, we have your numbers. But please, if you'd like to, to sign up a child for any of these programs and take advantage of these amazing offers, feel free to send us an email. You have our email address, drop us a message on WhatsApp, chat with us on the website or whichever way that works for you. So I think at this point, I would like to, Mr. Pennington, if it's okay with you, we can take 2-3 questions as we wind out. I think we still have like 3 minutes. That's okay?
Of course.
All right, let's see. Beatrice is asking, so you can run the programs in Uganda? Yes, Beatrice, not just that we can, we have, okay? We do, we run programs in Uganda. So if you're interested, and team, please note down the people who are expressing interest. We'll get in touch, Beatrice. And yes, we run the programs in Uganda. Yeah, someone is telling me the elections are in January in Uganda. Yes, we are aware of that. And that's why we're saying we'll communicate the dates once we work with the team from Uganda. And I don't know if our team leaders from Uganda are here. We have Patrick Muchibi and Cynthia. They're here. Okay. Nakato Ali says, I'm also interested. I see you. I think if anybody has a question, I can see, can you please share the recording? We'll share this recording with you, okay? And you can also find it on our website. So if you go to potentialbridge.com, you will be able to access this recording, and we welcome you to do that. Contacts in Uganda. Yeah, we are sharing that shortly. Team, if you could please post the contacts for Uganda. If you actually visit our website, you'll get the Uganda contacts right there. As we wind up, parents, any questions?
There's a question on the best way to regulate social media use amongst teens.
Sorry, say that again, Muredi?
It's connected to phone use and social media use.
Mr. Pennington, do you want to talk about it again?
Yeah, I think there are some very useful apps which can regulate use of phones, which I would strongly recommend. But actually, sometimes it comes down to a bit of tough love. It's actually saying, right, this is how you can use your phone. If you're in a good parents group with school group, there's nothing more powerful than having a commitment across a year group or the students in the school where they say, right, actually, we're going to get off social media between these hours. I know it's difficult you can't really imagine that the teenagers are going to buy into it, but actually, you've all heard, I'm sure, the phrase, FOMO. Actually, that's their biggest worry, that they're missing out on something. And so if, as a group, especially in the exam years and around about revision time, if you as a group of parents and can empower your teenagers to say, actually, we're going to have a social media kind of closed for an hour or even an hour and a half, 2 hours, you'll be amazed at the sort of buy-in you'll get from your teenagers if they know that everybody's doing it. But there are some very good apps out there. But otherwise than that, I'm afraid it is sometimes as a parent going, you're not having that phone. You need to give it to me at that point. It can be difficult, but you'll see the benefits after a couple of times. Self-motivate. There's a question about self-motivation. Can I just answer that one quickly?
Sure.
Yeah, I think self-motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. I think the intrinsic motivation is the most powerful for a teenager. Yeah, extrinsic works quite quickly in the fact that, you might do something for an immediate response, but actually, if they're working towards something and they can see the progress they're making, you'll be incredible motivation. So I think almost if you can see, right, this is where you want to go to, this is what you can expect to see at various points, and they can start ticking off their successes, you will find that your teenager will become intrinsically motivated to move forward, but you may need to signpost where they're succeeding at each point, rather than seeing it as being from zero to goal and finished. And I think that probably goes back to that point about us as adults communicating with our teenagers. It's a process. Don't expect to go from 2 to 10. There's a question about apps. I'll share some of the apps with Alice to be able to share with the people on the call.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, as you said, parents, I can see a lot of people asking about the recording. Yes, we will share the recording. If you go to our website, you should be able to access it. We'll share notes, all these materials. I think there's a book that Mr. Pennington has recommended. I've also seen that Mr. Muredi has shared another book on on sleep and why it's important. So yes, we will share all this material. As I can see that we're running out of time, parents, if there's nobody else who has anything from my team, mine is to deeply, deeply thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for making time, for being here. To our panelists, Mr. Pennington, the team, Mureithi, Lynn, Milka, Corazon, thank you so much for making this happen. This would not have been a success without you guys at all. And it's only the beginning. So please look out for more of these sessions. We're going to invite different people. We're going to talk about different topics. And I don't know if Mr. Pennington, would you be open to gracing us with your presence once again in this?
If the feedback's okay, I'm very happy to come back.
Okay, maybe you guys can let us know how you found the session. Yeah. We'll send you a form to sort of just give us your feedback and how what you felt about it. Sharon, thank you for giving it to us live. She says, thank you. It was great. Looking forward to more of this. Thank you so much. So I think, yeah, we need a lot of help and support in the schools. We'll be keen to follow. So I think it's looking green. Mr. Pennington is looking pretty green, but nonetheless, we'll see what they have to say. But thank you so much, parents. Thank you for making time. Very good session, Clay. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know. When you give us that feedback, it sort of motivates us to keep, coming back with more, invest time in doing more research and bringing you guys more products. I think someone is saying, yeah, people are sharing books. Great session. Thank you. I mean, are you seeing the emojis reaction? Oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. Thank you so much, parents. Thank you, panelists. I think at this point, I'm going to end the meeting and we'll see you next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.